Okay, so we're now done looking at the model era, let's start looking at some of the CGI Christmas specials. Remember, before watching these, I've only seen up to season 8, so my knowledge of the new characters is basically zero. So just keep that in mind while I review all this nonsense. So let's see if the CGI era really deserves all the hate it gets by starting with the season 12 episode, The Party Surprise. Season 12 was a weird season because it mixed CGI elements with models, and it was kind of off-putting when I watched this episode, but I guess it's just something I'm going to have to get used to. So anyway, this is finally a proper Christmas episode with the small engines, and specifically one called Freddy. Why couldn't it have just been one of the small engines that I know of? As this is the beginning of the CGI era, we get a lot more human characters getting the spotlight, specifically Mr. Percival here and his family. How is Mr. Percival having red-headed kids when both he and his wife have black hair? That's not possible unless it's a kid show, let's move past it. Freddy wants to do a Christmas party at the Wolf instead of Mr. Percival's house because Colin can't move. And who is Colin?
Who are you people?
I just looked it up, and this character is introduced in this episode, and is only in this episode. This isn't a case of me needing prior knowledge, this is just a case of a bad character introduction. Again, I'll be honest, during most of this episode I was so distracted by the CGI that I couldn't fully concentrate on the story. But what I did note about the episode was that it was just average and pretty dull. Nothing really happened in it. So this episode is getting a 5. Okay, moving on to a full CGI episode, Merry Winter Wish. And just how long are these episodes getting? This is nearly 9 minutes. I really wish I had known that before I decided to review every single one of these. Also, the trains have their own voices now too. Sorry, I'll get used to it. So here Thomas delivers the Star of Knapford, a festival light that makes wishes come true. And he tries to let everyone make a wish and as a result crashes. Everyone then comes and helps Thomas out, with their wishes all having been just to all be together. So in a way they did wish for Thomas to crash. This was a nice episode, if a totally different kind of show than what I'm used to. They also made James less of a dick, which that's certainly a plus. I'll give this one a 6 out of 10. Henry's Magic Box. Right, this episode is just nonsensical. Henry has to deliver a box to the farm, then finds the box has turned into 5 trees, then 10, then a forest, and panics because he thinks the box is no longer there and the Fat Controller proper looks at him like he's an idiot for not knowing that a forest was in the box. Look at them, they're not even chopped down, these are planted trees. You can't store a forest in a box. That's just, no. The episode then ends with the Fat Controller dressing up as Santa, so he was Santa all along. Then who is this? This one's dumb, but the ending is okay. Reminds me of the very early Christmas episodes where they'd all have all the engines together for a big Christmas party at the end. It gets a 4 out of 10. Merry Misty Island. Now this is the kind of problem with not having watched the show properly since season 8. There's this whole new set and characters, and there's too much Thomas lore that I'm not caught up with. But basically, Jedward here have never had a Christmas party before and seemingly don't really know a lot about Christmas at all. They then decorate Misty Island off screen because I don't know how they're doing that without limbs. Oh, they get their drivers to do it, who presumably should know how to properly decorate. Just look at this guy, you can see in his posture he's like, oh, what are these goddamn trains making me do now? It's okay, Phil, just 12 more years until retirement. You can do this. So everyone then shows up to help out with decorating, which amounts to a single Christmas tree. I didn't much like this one, and Jedward annoyed me. This one gets a 3 out of 10. Let It Snow. More Jedward. Great. They do some weird ritual to try to make it snow, where Thomas goes to different places and sings. Remember when these trains used to have jobs and worked? I do quite like how Gordon starts off rightly annoyed at Thomas's nonsense, and then ends up feeling sorry for him, so decides to help him out. I always like the relationship between Thomas and Gordon in this show. It reminds me a lot of the relationship between SpongeBob and Squidward. Like, Thomas might annoy Gordon, but Gordon likes Thomas really. Doesn't stop the episode from being bad though, it gets a 4 out of 10. Ho Snowman. Thomas complains about wearing his snowplow, they're bringing that back, are they? Well, no. He then just leaves and isn't in the episode anymore at all. It turns out this episode is actually about Henry talking to a snowman and is freaked out by it. You're a talking train, Henry. An inanimate object such as a snowman talking shouldn't be that weird to you. But it's not really a snowman, it's Charlie pretending to be a snowman. But not knowing that, Henry hides in his shed having a full-on existential crisis. You live in a world of talking cranes, helicopters, cars, tractors. I just can't. Salty's surprise. Edward tries to give Salty a present, green paint, a funnel, a Christmas tree. Actually, look at how he carries that Christmas tree. What about the driver? How's he fitting in there? Or the fire you have next to that flammable tree? This doesn't seem safe. Although, looking at it right here, there's clearly not a driver in there. Just what is going on? Have these trains evolved to not need drivers now? Because that might just explain a lot of the decision making going on here. So Edward gives Salty all these presents and Salty just rudely says that he doesn't want any of them. Ungrateful. Instead, all he really wanted was a new story to tell. So tells the story of the episode we've just watched.
That was a wonderful story, Salty.
No, it wasn't, you lying little 2 out of 10. Emily's Winter Party Special. The Fat Controller says whichever engine is the most helpful gets to pull the Christmas train, so gives Henry and Thomas jobs and tells Emily to do nothing, right to her face. That's a power move right there. He then gets his hat blown off by the wind and Emily says she'll get it back. I mean, it's a hat. A big, heavy top hat. How far could it really have gone? So instead of looking like 2 feet in front of her, Emily decides to go all over the island, not looking for the hat, but instead boasting that she's going to now pull the train because she's the most helpful engine for getting the hat back, which she incidentally hasn't done. Why did you not just grab it back at the sheds? Why did the Fat Controller not grab it? Why did no one there grab it? How far could this hat have gone? Just how strong was this wind? Was it some kind of hurricane tornado? Because if so, the retrieval of a hat is the least of your problems. Also, this does just go to show that the Fat Controller's railway now has too many engines. If he's now able to dedicate a whole engine's worth of resources to getting a hat back. So Emily ends up not getting the hat back, but decides to just pull the train anyway. And the Fat Controller shows up and he's all like, you didn't get my hat. It was like such an easy job and you just didn't do it. This is why I told you not to do anything at all, Emily. You're a liability. I hate you, Emily. Then she finds the hat on a snowman. I don't believe for a moment it travelled that far, but she finds it, gives it back. Everyone's happy. 3 out of 10. The Christmas Tree Express. Here, Rheneas wants to surprise everyone with a Christmas tree, so he asks Toby to take him to Misty Island to get one. But Toby doesn't want to go to Misty Island, and I am with Toby on this one. I wouldn't want to go to Misty Island either. These guys suck. Also, Rheneas wants to get the tree back before anyone wakes up, but the sun is shining by the time they even reach Misty Island. It's the dead of winter, in England. The sun usually doesn't come up here until like 9 AM, by which point I'm sure everyone is long awake. They get the tree, everyone's happy. 4 out of 10. Santa's Little Engine. First off, Michelangelis has been replaced as narrator. That's not right. We're now stuck with some guy called Mark Morrigan. Not only that, but now the Fat Controller has a little train car thing. This show has officially gone too far now. The episode starts with a Fat Controller riding in his little train car thing right behind Thomas. Don't bother riding in Thomas or anything. Sure, take your own little weird car. The Fat Controller is asked to dress up as Santa and ride in a sleigh. So he dresses up his car train as a sleigh and it looks pretty good. But everyone tells him it looks terrible. Who do they think they're speaking to? The Fat Controller has lost his edge. People used to never dare speak to him that way. He'd have trains killed for less insubordination than that. He's then given a different sleigh which looks objectively worse, and look how he gets in it. I don't know if that's an animation error or if he's actually just supposed to face plant it. It then falls down the hill and slides perfectly along the tracks, but luckily Thomas catches him and brings him back, getting a branch stuck on him in the process, which makes him look a bit like a reindeer. Then something really, really weird happens. This guy puts a red nose on Thomas to complete the reindeer look. This big red nose, which would only fit an engine, he just had that in his pocket. How? What? I know I nitpick this episode a lot, but the new narrator does do quite a good job, and I don't know if it's Stockholm Syndrome at this point, but I do admit that I quite like this episode. 6 out of 10. Well, that seems like a pretty good place to stop for now, so like this video if you enjoyed it, leave a comment of what you thought of these episodes, And most importantly, make sure that you subscribe and press the little bell icon to be notified when the next part of my Thomas Christmas retrospective goes up. Thank you so much for watching and happy holidays.